to make my version of Salsbury steak together with some mashed potatoes and a side of vegetables. So first of all, we've got ingredients for the burger steak, and we've got the meat right here. I'm using turkey meat. I've diced some bell peppers, and there's already 1 egg in here together with some salt and pepper to taste. So we're going to be mixing this, and then later we will roll it, or basically cover the patty with some breadcrumbs just to make sure that it stays intact when we start frying it. Now for the side of vegetables, we're going to have some broccoli, about a cup of carrots, and about a cup and a half of corn. And we'll cook them in some butter. So this is about a teaspoon of butter and some spices. Now for the sauce, we're gonna have some onions, chicken broth cube. I'm using half. Hi! Rocket wants to say hi. You can't sit here yet because I have a lot of stuff on here, but later I'll call you, okay? Thank you. So that's going to be for the sauce, and we may need a little bit of flour actually, so I'll be adding that later. And for the mashed potatoes, we're going to have half a cup of milk. This is about 5 small pieces of potatoes that have been peeled and quartered. And we'll use about a tablespoon of butter to mix in with that, and again some salt and pepper to taste. So let's begin with boiling the potatoes because that usually takes longer. So let's start off with that. I'll just drop these in a pot of boiling water.
When dropping food onto boiling water, try to drop it on top of another food item, like what I'm doing right now. It will eventually spread out anyhow. This way you get less of the splattering so you don't burn yourself. So drop it on top of each other. So. And there we go. Now cover that and let it cook for about 5 minutes and then check up on it.
And now we're going to be mixing the ground meat. So while we mix this, we might as well heat the stove and make sure that the oil before we drop in the burger is very, very hot. So now we start to make the patties. So what you need to do is just spoon about this much, which is about a tablespoon. Shape it into a ball, like so, until it kind of gets flatter. I try to make it small because I have small hands, so if I try to make it a lot bigger, it's more difficult for me to manage. So you can make it bigger if you feel like you can manage a bigger patty. So now that I've got that, we now just drop it into the breadcrumbs. I'm using Parmesan breadcrumbs. So just drop it in there and then flip it over. And if it kind of crumbles, it's okay. Just form it into a ball once again. But at least you've got that coating of breadcrumbs. And now we've got our patty. So So simply place it on a plate and get that ready for frying. And we just continue that process. So now that the pan is hot, we can now start cooking the first patty. So just scoop it up. And you can kind of just press on down with your cooking spatula just to get that rounder shape if you want.
Increase the temperature to medium-high and let that cook for about 3 minutes before flipping over. So we wait for 3 minutes because we don't want the patty to be falling apart. So we want to make sure that the underside is cooked and browned before we start flipping it over. So remember, after 3 minutes, then you can flip over the patty slowly. So it holds together because we've let it cook for a little bit longer. If you do it less than 3 minutes, it's just going to fall apart. Once again, after this side has cooked for 3 minutes, let's just do a quick flip. Make sure it's evenly browned. You can press on the meat just to make sure it cooks. I'm very scared of eating raw meat. There you go. Give it an extra heat. And we now transfer it to a plate. Now we move on to the next one. I'm going to cook Rockets. This is a smaller piece. So he's got a small burger steak just for him.
After 10 minutes, you can now check on your mashed potatoes. And if you want to see if the potatoes are good to go, just get a fork and sort of pierce it through the flesh of the potato. And if the fork goes through smoothly, with no effort, and it's not difficult to poke through it all the way through, like you reach the bottom of the pan through the potato, then that means the potato is good to go. You can then easily mash it. So while the rest of the meat continues to cook, we can now prepare our mashed potatoes. And as you can see, these are very tender now, so we can then just transfer it onto this bowl. But first, I want to empty it because there's some water drippings. So. Now, we simply transfer onto the bowl. So even if you don't have those utensils that they use to mash potatoes with a flat bottom, it's okay. You can just do it with, a regular fork. If you've cooked your potatoes well enough, it shouldn't be difficult to mash it with simply a fork. And sometimes it's good to have a little bit of the solid potatoes in the mashed potatoes. So once again, we kind of like the mashed potato not completely mashed, but with some solid pieces. And so this is how mashed I want it to be. And now we add the butter. And we add half a cup of milk. You can just put a quarter first and see how that works. That way you don't put in too much and make it too watery. You can always add more if you want to. looks like just a quarter of cup of milk will do. In the meantime, let's check on the burger. As you can see, it's got this kind of consistency. There's some bigger pieces in there, and that's how we like it, so we only used a quarter cup of milk. And now we add some salt and pepper. Mix it a little bit more. And there we have it. I didn't make it too flavorful because we're still going to have a lot of flavor from the Salsbury steak and the sauce. So it's a little bit more bland, and once again, the gravy is going to give it a lot more flavor. The corn and carrots, I'm just going to kind of cook them in a little bit of butter and some salt. So we'll do that right now.
Start with the carrots and let that cook for a little bit, for about 2 minutes.
Now we add half a cup of water to the sauteing onions.
And now we add the chicken broth. So just kind of let that melt. We check up on our carrots. We can turn up the heat a little bit more. And we put in the corn a little later, right before we take it out of the pot. And now we add the chicken broth. So just kind of let that melt. Now we put in the butter for the broccoli. As you can see, it's not a lot of butter, a little bit of flavor. And we drop in the broccoli. Cover that and let that cook for about 5 minutes. Now we check up on our gravy. It's browning from the chicken broth. Okay, now we add a teaspoon of flour. Make sure that's mixed in so it doesn't harden. let that cook for 5 more minutes.
So if you want a lot of sauce for the steak, you can add more water. So I think we're going to be adding 1 more cup of water. A cube of chicken broth that I didn't put in earlier.
Add the corn. Give it a toss. Cover and continue to cook for about 2 minutes.
Alright, so I've got the burger steak and the mashed potato, and now I'll be serving the vegetables and lastly the sauce. I'll be garnishing it with some chives. And there you have it. Salsbury steak with broccoli, corn and carrots, sauce, and mashed potatoes. So I made my plate right over here. And this is Rocket's miniature plate with his mini Salsbury steak and his vegetables and his mashed potatoes. Alright, time to eat!
Again?